And we're live.
Hello.
Sorry for the delay.
Hello,
Good
all.
evening, everybody. It is Thursday. Generational change. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and
I think we just change our intro every single time. I don't think we have a normal intro.
No, but we have changed.
I'm Jen.
I'm Peter, and we've changed our photo. So now we have a different profile.
We did, and I'd like to point out why we did that. I'd like to say something about why we did that.
Sure.
So, how many years have we been working together? 2.5 years. I want to tell everybody this, and I really don't care anymore if people know this, and I am just done. Okay. I don't do Twitter. I don't. Never have. I don't know how to, and I don't care to. I also don't do Instagram. Never have, don't know how to, don't want to. I used to do Facebook, haven't been on there in about 7 months. I don't do social media. That being said, all of our platforms are now our platforms so that there is no confusion that when a tweet comes out, it's collective, it's from our platform. So yeah, because apparently people don't believe me that I'm not on social media. I swear I'm not. And I also don't watch mainstream news. I really do live in like a little fishbowl. Well, if it doesn't come from Kyle Kalinske or Bo or, whatever, Tim Black, then I probably don't know about it. Just saying. So
or Jordan Chariton.
Yeah, that's true. But I was just today thinking international stuff. Like I had Afghanistan on the mind, and no, that's not normally a Jordan thing. So I don't. Yeah.
No, but we'll obviously be getting into that with our main guests at 8:30.
So anyway, that is the new picture. It's both of us.
But we cannot understate the importance of electoral politics, even though we believe in the inside-outside strategy. And a candidate who ran for Congress on the BNC slate.
Yes.
And is now running to represent the entire state of Ohio, which we were just in.
Yes.
And I must say was very nice. I don't know why Ohio gets the reputation that it gets. I thought it was wonderful.
I think it goes back to like the industrial times, possibly.
That's true.
And it is they do have kind of cruddy weather. I mean, there are things about it that are not very appealing.
Well, not everybody could have South Florida weather, but then again,
that's not appealing either. That's like living in a swamp. I've always liked the Midwest. I like Midwestern people.
Yes.
I've liked Midwestern towns. I lived in Chicago. I liked it. My husband's family is from Beechwood. And so I've spent time there. Actually, this past trip was the first time I ever went anywhere else in Cleveland that wasn't kind of in the northeastern suburban area. This was the first time and I really liked it. I liked that whole area where we were staying. It was really cool with the old houses and stuff. And I really liked it.
Well, the lady we are about to bring on is somebody who knows Ohio a lot better than we do, and not just the area that we were in, but obviously the entire state.
I know.
Because she is running to represent the entire state.
The entire state.
So without further ado, Morgan Harper, welcome to Generational Change.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Hi, Morgan. I don't think we've ever met. It's nice to meet you.
Great to meet you. I think we've been on Zooms together, but
but I want to tell you when you came on at BNC, but then you weren't at the summit, and so I didn't get a chance to meet you. But one of the things that always stuck with me, and I love this, Morganize, great, brilliant. And I said that in the very beginning. Yep. You were one of the first candidates that I pointed. I'm like, oh, you have to see what she's doing. Like I just thought it was so smart, and I always thought that was really clever. So
I can't claim full credit for the slogan, but I have embraced it.
That's cool. It's cool though. You own it now. Like it's awesome.
No,
I can claim generational change.
Yeah, he did do generational change.
Oh, really? I like that. I like the brand. I like the little play on words.
Well, branding and marketing is so important in politics.
It is, sadly.
It's just sadly. But you have to understand, you got to reach people where they are. And so a great marketing slogan could go a very long way because they just hear Morganize, like, oh yeah, you're that candidate who says,
well, it's just cool. And it's cool. I wanted to ask you, going from running for a congressional seat is obviously very different than running for a statewide office. And I wanted to ask you, like, what's that like? Like, where was the decision making? Okay, obviously you weren't successful, and from a win-lose perspective, we view campaigns as, as a part of the progress. But so what was the inspiration to then turn around and say, you know what, we did this, okay, we got where we needed to go, that we're okay to now run for statewide office?
Yeah. Well, I mean, one, I would say, I like that you mentioned, the campaigns and wins and losses and all that, because it's a lot of building, it's a lot of movement building. And since our last campaign wrapped up, we've been focused on continuing to engage our community. And I think we can all agree over the past year and a half, there's been a lot of need, and only increasing in many ways because of the pandemic. And so, we started a grassroots organization, Columbus Stand Up, which is, in the city where I live in Ohio, in Columbus, Ohio. And we just got to work distributing masks before there was a real plan or the federal leadership that, we were desperately waiting for. We were just serving our community and starting a rideshare program to get people to the polls and then their vaccine appointments, really showing people what community-based politics could look like. And for a lot of folks, it was the first time. And as we know, we're losing a lot of people who are sick of the political system. And so we need to go directly where people are to get them engaged. That is my political philosophy. That is the philosophy of how I think we get people to pay attention to policy, is we have to meet people where they are. And so, with this run, and why I'm running for US Senate in Ohio, is because we need that more than ever, because the stakes are extremely high for our country right now and our state. The people who are on the Republican side are not people that are on the side of our communities, not people that are interested in getting to Washington to accomplish anything. They are people that are going to continue the tradition of Trumpian politics that is clearly not serving us. And so, we really need, as Democrats, to win this seat, to flip this seat and protect the Senate majority in Washington. And, and the way that we get there, and one critical moment for me was the fact that Biden, though, he won overall, lost Ohio by more than Hillary Clinton in 2016, this past year. And that was a wake-up call, I think, for a lot of people as to, how well our strategies were working, and that, this is the time. This is the time to be bold, to stick to our values, and to get organized, you could say, across the state, to really mobilize the people that we need to turn out to win.
Speaking with Morgan Harper, who is running to represent the state of Ohio in the U.S. Senate. In Florida, we have what we like to say is about probably 5 different states. It's broken up into different regions.
Yeah. Well, Ohio just being smaller is obviously, it's more manageable, but yeah.
How would you describe obviously there's Northeast Ohio, which is, Cleveland, Akron. You obviously have Central Ohio, which is the greater Columbus area, Southwest, which is Cincinnati. Mm-hmm. But how else would you describe the state overall in terms of regions and, more or less your game plan to focus on those specific areas?
Like the demo.
Yeah. Well, I think what people are often surprised about with Ohio is it kind of gets lumped in with all of these other states, like Iowa. People think like, oh, Ohio, Iowa, they sound kind of similar. It must be the exact same place. and Ohio actually has a lot of cities, which I think is very unique for a state of our size. And that is where, we do see that there are a lot of voters who might be more inclined to vote Democratic, and especially a lot of Black voters. And that's going to be a core part of our strategy. And we put it out there, in our launch video is, we need to recognize what our coalition is to win, not spend a lot of energy trying to anticipate what might be happening on the other side, but how are we going to turn out the people who are on our side to actually want to vote? And that's not going to happen by doing the same old thing. That's going to happen by presenting to people a candidate, a campaign that is offering a choice that will be on their side, that has a track record of standing up to corporate interests, that's getting to Washington to stand up for our communities and not just build a career. This is what people are ready for throughout this state, in communities, both in some of these urban centers that I was describing, but also other areas. And this is how we're going to be able to mobilize turnout in order to flip this seat.
Yeah.
What have you seen so far in regards to responses from the voters? I know a lot of times we focus on the primary issues that progressives like to focus on, obviously Medicare for all, living wage, possibly the Green New Deal. What have you discovered so far are the primary concerns of Ohioans as far as, where, they stand and what they're looking to see, considering the fact that, right now it's a fairly divided government in Ohio. Obviously Sherrod Brown is one of the better senators that we do have. But obviously the government in many ways is also controlled by the GOP. So it's kind of like a hodgepodge in many ways. So I'm curious as to what the voters are saying are the primary concerns.
Yeah, I think like a lot of places, the cost of healthcare continues to be a very big issue, drug prices in particular, economic issues, just not feeling like this is a place where maybe still people can not only have jobs, but actually have careers and actually build a family and be able to support it. But more than anything, I think a lot of voters here recognize that this system has been rigged against us, and us is a pretty big us. If you have to go to work to live, you're in this camp of people that are kind of sick of the same old status quo that is only serving a very small set of people and large corporations. And so that's why it's so important, I think, and why we already are seeing, a very good amount of traction in just the early days of our campaign, to have a message that is We're not taking corporate PAC money. We're going to be able to stand up for what we need to deliver real change. And because people have already heard it all and now are ready for authenticity and real results. And that's what we're going to be offering. And, when we're seeing it, I think one of the biggest indicators of just the hunger out there for new, fresh voice and what we're offering is in our early days that we had a launch rally here in Columbus and had almost 300 people that showed up. And, it was actually a man that I know who came and has been in politics for a long time in the state. And after we spoke, and he was like, wow, it's August. This is a primary and an off-cycle year. And I saw a lot of young people out there fired up about a Senate race. And that doesn't just happen, but it only happens when you are mobilizing people with a message that is about using politics to actually serve us. And that is the key part of what we're going to be about.
I think that as you said before, the most important thing isn't what we say to people, it's what we demonstrate. And I think that people are really tired of hearing platitude sandwiches. And even when we're talking about the right policies, like we could sit here and say, we support Medicare for all, and that's great. And we as well, that is the right thing. But I don't think people are used to seeing their representatives actually serving the community. And that's something that we have done. We did it throughout our campaign, and we still are involved in community service. And I think that, like you said, people are not used to that. They're not used to that, which is so interesting to me, because our representatives and our senators are public servants. They need to be serving the community. They don't. They only focus on the legislative policy aspects, where they all just sit there and blame and point the finger. And all of those are important issues. But they all forget that they should be also serving. Like the legislative portion is one aspect of your job. And yet that's all they seem to do. So I think you're right. And I think that when people, it's not so much about hearing, it's about seeing what you're doing. And it really does matter because people don't have to really agree with you. They have to like you. They have to think that you're the real deal. And it doesn't, I have people that supported me that probably don't agree with me on anything. But they just like me, and they like that I speak truth to power and am transparent. And I think that's the most important thing. And it sounds to me like you are on that same mindset.
Yeah, no. And I think people, exactly right, Jen, I agree with you. And I think people, we're seeing in Ohio based on the results, right? Of who actually wins, that folks aren't into this inside game. There's this sense that if you're a political insider, then you might not actually be able to pull off anything you're saying or really mean it. But if you have a little bit more of, the outsider status, but not just, looking to rabble rouse or anything, but actually deliver results and be about people first, that is a necessary first step to get people to engage in the political process. It's what we saw in our congressional, being able to get inconsistent voters. It is absolutely what we will need to see to get the turnout as a party here to be able to overcome the very reliable turnout on the right. And the people are out there, but we have to be leading with a strong message and authenticity in order to get people to vote.
And we know money matters. We know money matters. I mean, it's unfortunate that it does. And as far as I know, are there any other non-corporate senators other than Bernie? Is there anyone else that's in the Senate that isn't corporate?
As crazy as it is to say, but it turns out that the only other senator who is Rand Paul.
Is Rand Paul.
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right. So then it's safe to say that it's a very small group of two. And we know why. We know how hard it is to run a congressional race for a district as a grassroots campaign when you're fighting against big money. How do you do it at a state level? And really, because you're not going to outraise. And you have to just outwork. Right. And so what's the thought in that? Obviously, I mean, I don't even know who your incumbent is. Who is it?
There's actually, no incumbent, open seat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Retiring.
Yeah. Soon to be open seat.
So how many people are in this race?
So right now on the Democratic side, it looks like it'll be me and Tim Ryan as the Democratic candidates. The field could still fill out a bit, but we'll see. But it seems like, we're probably going to be the main two. And then on the Republican side, we have, a cast of characters, JD Vance, Josh Mandel, again, guys that, I would say are really not for us in any way, and not even clear that they're willing to protect the democracy based on a lot of the rhetoric that they put out there and need to be stopped. So That's the state of the field at the moment.
You know, you mentioned J.D. Vance and Josh Mandel, especially. Josh is probably the one that the GOP establishment will get behind, despite the fact that he's scandal-ridden, is the nicest way I could put it.
That's never been a problem for me.
By the way, is their Tim Ryan as feckless as our Tim Ryan?
I can't say. I can tell you that
we have a county person that's a very feckless Tim Ryan. I'm wondering if that's yours as well.
No, Tim Ryan is a congressional representative in Ohio. Okay. He unfortunately likes to
corporate.
He likes to play both sides. He likes to say he's progressive, but he's really moderate, and
he takes corporate money though.
As far as I know, he does. And so at the end of the day, there's no wishy-washiness with a Morgan Harper.
No,
you know what you're getting,
no.
And that is the distinction. And I hate to say it, but you have a much more endearing personality than he does. He's a very dry individual.
I don't even know him, and I don't like him. I'm just going to say that like my mom does. If you don't like him, I don't like him.
Like I said, if it's a question of the Morgan and Tim being on the debate stage, I have little doubt who's going to perform better and who's going to come off better to the average voter, which is, like you said, they have to like you. And so with that said, and one of the things that we like to talk about, especially with the local races, is the importance of building these relationships with various activists, elected officials. Do you have what you would consider a good core support network that's already there for you, that's going to help you get the vote out throughout the state and ultimately make the difference? Because the grassroots will ultimately determine whether or not you are able to pull this off.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a top priority. I mean, that organizing starts, as I announced in the rally on Saturday, that day. Now we have to be getting people mobilized, and we've already seen a really great amount of interest and people signing up to volunteer. And so we just need to, continue to build the organization and structure. And that's what I think has been missing in a big way from some of our statewide races in particular, is really having that connection to the grassroots. But, luckily we've had the experience of doing that in our congressional run. I think we've been able to show people, just the value of that. And like you all were referencing earlier, I mean, I don't know how to do a campaign in another way, right? Because if we're not directly connected to people, you don't really know where folks are at and what we should be prioritizing. And so that connection can't just be an electoral cycle thing. That has to be ongoing. That has to be constant communication, even after winning and representing people, in order to make sure that we're truly reflecting the will and the needs of the people. So I'm really looking forward, and we are as a team, to continue to build across the state. And that is going to be a core part of how we win and are able to flip this seat.
Well, I cannot tell you enough how much I would love to see a non-corporate person get into the Senate. We've had Erica Smith on as well, and I'm a fan of hers in North Carolina. And as far as I know, is there anyone else that's like, I mean, to me, it's a big undertaking, and I appreciate that you are someone that walks the walk and has been keeping it going since. And people need to understand and appreciate that. I don't think they do. And it is also one of the biggest mistakes that I think that people on the left make, because on the right, they campaign year round. They don't ever stop campaigning. They're always campaigning. On the left, if most people they lose, they go away. You never hear from them again. And I appreciate that you're not doing that, and that you're still wanting to be in it and fight for people. I really do. Everybody show Morgan some love. Be a monthly donor. Sign up to Phone Bank. Text Bank or whatever. But
move to Ohio.
It's not even that. It's the fact that you've got so many surrounding areas. You have Michigan, you have West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, Indiana. If anybody is within range, remember, this is a statewide race. You can literally cross the border in any of the 5 surrounding states and make a direct impact. There's canvassing that is absolutely needed everywhere, because that's what will win the day. Interaction face-to-face with voters is ultimately what you're going to have. The other candidates will have the corporate money. They will have more of the TV ads and the mailers and whatnot. But what you'll have is on-the-ground action. And that can make all the difference in the world. And like you said, people are fed up with the nonsense. I think more and more people by the day are learning that the old way is not working anymore. And it is time for a generational change, if you will, because we do have a different vision in terms of how this needs to be done. It's like everything that's going on right now in the Middle East. if you have a representative who is funded by the war profiteers, then the endless war is going to continue.
Yeah.
If you start,
It's not a mystery, people.
no, if you start to elect representatives who are not bought and paid for by corporate special interests, that will make the difference. Winning the U.S. Senate is certainly the hardest of all. This is definitely going to be a sought-after seat, but it's an open race, and you've already run for office at the federal level. You have that experience. You know what to expect from the establishment on both sides, quite frankly. So I think you're definitely ready for this. I think we all would agree that this is something that is obviously going to take a monumental effort for sure, but one that is definitely doable. So with that said, when is the primary? And obviously morganharper.org. If you guys want to get involved, we certainly recommend that you do. So closing statement, the floor is yours.
Yeah. When is your primary?
Primary is in May 2022, so everyone look out for that. We've got some time, but time moves very quickly, as we all know, in campaign and COVID times. And we need to just get to work immediately. So yeah, very much appreciate anyone's ability to financially support, sign up to volunteer. But the stakes, as I started in saying in my remarks, cannot be higher right now. For us as a country and here in Ohio, the same old way of doing things has not worked. We have an opportunity here to implement a new game plan that starts with us, with the people. And that is going to be the power of organizing that allows us to really get our state, our country, back on track, because a lot of folks are suffering. We know that, and people are fed up. And so we need to be able to mobilize folks to turn out, win, so we can protect the Democratic Senate majority in Washington. And most importantly, deliver the policy changes that are going to impact people's lives for the better.
Yeah.
Well, if a good friend of ours happens to run for the U.S. Congress again in Ohio's 11th district, that'll just be two wonderful people that'll be running in the state. And when we ultimately, and we will, come to the state again and lend a hand, we'll be canvassing for two wonderful candidates.
Yes.
So with that being said,
and I'm sure I just want to respond. Dee Dee said that Ohio needs to legalize marijuana. I'm pretty confident Morgan's all for that. So it's a safe bet.
I say all the time, progressives and libertarians agree on civil liberties.
Yeah.
This is a pretty clear-cut issue. Unfortunately, it's a corporate special interest issue as to why
I mean, it's not
cannabis is not legal.
It's not like a key thing, but someone put that up there, and I'm thinking, I'm sure you support the legalization of cannabis, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah, big alcohol and big pharma don't exactly want that to happen, but we're gonna make that. So we're gonna change that. So with that said, Morgan, we really appreciate you coming on, and we will hopefully have you back again. We're going to be doing more candidate panels as we go forward, so we'd love to have you back on the show in the near future.
Great, yeah, looking forward to it, and thanks again for the time and opportunity.
It's nice to finally meet you.
Yes, we'll talk soon. Have a good night.
Have a great evening. Bye. So she is a great candidate, and we knew that for a while.
She was a great congressional candidate.
Yes.
She's a great Senate candidate. I obviously would love to see another non-corporate senator. That would be pretty amazing.
And I think that this is also the evolution, as we talk about, within the non-corporate movement, because we don't call it the progressive movement anymore. It's the non-corporate
that
movement.
Word's been hijacked. When my congresswoman can refer to herself as progressive, that's just
but she is a progressive, don't you know that?
Yeah. So when Debbie Wasserman Schultz calls herself a progressive, we can all just say that term no longer stands for anything.
Well, be careful. You don't want to be accused of being like a
I'll be called anti-Semitic is what it will be.
Yeah. So apparently our mics are making a funny noise.
Mine is static. Do you hear it?
I hear static. Okay.
So tech support.
Before we move to our main panel, we want to get this thing figured out. So hang tight for 1 second, guys. John, how does it sound now? Let us know that we're good. Give us a thumbs up. Somebody in the chat.
I moved my phone. Danny says we're good. So if Danny says we're good, we're good.
Danny says we're good. Okay. Well, as many of you know, and it's kind of interesting, ever since we started.
I need my phone for the intro.
Yeah, you need your phone for the intro. Okay, fine. Well,
okay. Hold on. I have copious notes.
You screw this up though.
I'm not going to screw it up. I'm going to say it right. I'm going to be.
Maybe it's my phone. So my phone's away, so you won't have to worry about it. We have been very good at like this really odd timing of a lot of things. Like we all have guests on the show that just happen to be coming on to talk about a topic that is extremely relevant to the time. We were planning this podcast to talk with veterans about Afghanistan and just the Middle East in general. And then the Kabul suicide bombing happens today. And when you think about how devastating war is in general, I have no doubt that there were a lot of these bombings that were going on over the course of the past 2 decades that never really got covered until it became clear that we were hurting the bottom line of the military industrial complex. And now these types of issues, unfortunately, are going to get highlighted constantly. And they are also going to be doing immense damage, because I don't think this is the last attack that you're going to see. I think that this is something that could potentially be coordinated in trying to coax us to going back. We saw that happen with Obama in, I think it was like 2014, where he.
Oh, I don't understand how this doesn't happen all the time. I would think that given what we do around the world, that we would be basically creating generations of angry, malcontent, desperate people that hate us.
Militant and,
So
a martyrdom.
Right. Like
It's not uncommon.
if you keep like really oppressing people, they're not going to just one day just say, you know what? All right.
But we're not the experts here. The experts are the people who actually served over there and are now.
I have
fancy intro?
well, it's not a fancy intro, but I have like a few words. Okay. So Karen Kwiatkowski, and I think I said that right. She's not shaking her head, so it's probably fine. Is retired U.S. Air Force Lieutenant Colonel. Her assignments included duties as a Pentagon desk officer and a variety of roles for National Security Agency. Since retiring, she's become a noted critic of the U.S. government's involvement in Iraq. Next, we have friend of the show who's been here before, Danny Sjursen. I don't know. Does anybody who doesn't know him? All right, I got to pull that up because I got to pull that up. But Danny is retired Army major and has been served in both Iraq and Afghanistan, and is very, very active and outspoken about a lot of the issues over there. He has written a few books. I read the last one. Well, actually, I listened to him narrate the last one.
That counts, though. It
doesn't. Okay, it doesn't count as reading, but I got the gist. Which is A True History of the United States. And then finally we have, and I'm sorry if I'm okay. Finally, we have Dennis Fritz, is retired United States Air Force Chief Master Sergeant. I got it right. I know I did. Served it for 28 years. At the height of his career, he held 2 of the highest enlisted leadership positions in the Air Force and Department of Defense. And in both positions, he was the principal advisor to 4-star generals, with a primary emphasis on advocating on behalf of tens of thousands of military members and their families. So this is somebody who advocates for wounded warriors as well, I believe. So
it seems like we've got an all-star panel.
It's very exciting.
We have
now I can put my
Danny to thank for that. And of course, your kind words really went a long way, because apparently a lot of people, on the military side now think that our show is a pretty cool place to be. So Dennis Fritz and Karen Kwiatkowski, welcome to Generational Change for the first time. And Danny, pleasure to have you back, my friend.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So this is like, I don't even know where to start. Like, it's sort of like a smorgasbord.
I mean, where do you guys, whoever wants to jump in first and just talk about, what happened today?
We could start with that. Like, we could start current, like with what happened today, and kind of work our way back.
Because if you remember, when Obama was trying to get us out of Iraq, sort of a similar situation happened. It was supposed to have the full troop withdrawal. And then, of course, that changed and went back in. And one of our supporters in the chat indicated that based on the statements that the president made today was along the same lines of, now we're going to go back. And so this is what endless war looks like. And whoever wants to jump in, give your thoughts on what did happen today and what you think the short and long-term ramifications are going to be of it.
Well, I can start, but I will promise to be brief, which is not my strong point. It's such a great, so I know these folks, we kind of work together. We're in the same general, kind of movement, right? I guess to the extent that there is one. The basic facts are, it looks like ISIS Khorasan, ISIS-K, right? This spin-off group in Afghanistan was probably behind this attack. Tragically, U.S. service members were killed. I think that I'll kind of pass it first to to Dennis Fritz on this because we've talked a little bit about the early outgrowth of the war, and then Karen Kwiatkowski probably can talk about a lot of what she saw in terms of like the lead up to other wars and being inside the Pentagon. But one of the things that strikes me in this is that it wasn't the Taliban most likely that attacked us, and one must wonder about the motives of it. So I listened to President Biden's speech, and there was, the mission's not over, I think was basically said. This is not over. We will hunt them down to the ends of the earth. And of course, one of the things that's never really spoken about, because it seems obtuse maybe when there are 12 American service members and others, right, who are killed is, but if we weren't there, there wouldn't have been Americans killed. And one must question the motive of the enemy. So the enemy gets a vote, right? There's this idea that when you look at Afghans or Iraqis or anyone who's Muslim, that they're barbarians. They've always been this way. The Sunnis and Shias have always been fighting. All of that is ahistorical. But that's out there. And so the Taliban gets lumped in with ISIS Khorasan, but they get a vote. They're rational actors. The Taliban is a rational actor. So is ISIS-K. You don't have to like what they believe to understand that. Now, where I'm going to turn it over to Dennis Fritz, because we've talked about this on the phone before, is who was the big winner of the post 9/11 20 years of war? Osama bin Laden, because he got everything that he wanted, and this does tie to what ISIS-K I think is trying to do. Osama bin Laden said that what we need to do is we need to get the 9/11 attacks aren't just to kill as many Americans as possible. It's to draw the United States deep into the Middle East so that we can do to them what we did to the Soviets. We can prove that a Kalashnikov and faith can take down a superpower. We will bleed them dry. In fact, when we invaded Iraq, he said, I can't believe my luck. I can't believe my luck. I mean, he said this, I'm paraphrasing, but he gave these statements. And so I think if I'm ISIS-K, I'm thinking, you know what I don't want? The United States to leave and leave me with the Taliban who doesn't like me. Because now I'm a bit player that's a spin-off extremist group, and I can't point to the infidel occupier and say that's why you should support me because I'm harder on them than the Taliban is. And so I think they're maybe trying to pull us back in and sort of maintain their legitimacy. And with that, I think I'll turn it over to people who were there at the Genesis when I was a cadet just in boxing class.
Well, listen, I hope you can hear me okay. As you're doing your testing of your mics, my daughter spent 30 minutes trying to help me out. She says, Dad, I can't hear you. Do y'all hear me okay?
It's a little staticky, but we hear you.
Okay, all righty. First of all, thanks for having me on. It is something that is dear to my heart, as Dad has alluded to. We've talked a lot about this. And when he mentioned about bin Laden, he's absolutely correct. He was hoping to bring us in, and sadly, it was a perfect storm. He had the perfect, at the time, the perfect administration, in the Bush administration. I hate to use this term, but a staff full of neocons that Karen can probably, speak up to as well. She was working with them early on, and then I started working with them after that. A person that probably Karen knows well, Abe Sjursen. Spent a lot of time with Abe. And one of the things that Danny mentioned about, it was like a dream for bin Laden. Well, when we went in there, I was very concerned about, us getting drawn in very lasting, profiteering, special interest war. And I started following this real closely when it was first announced, after 9/11, like all of us. I was concerned, wanted revenge, and quite frankly, it was upset. But one of the things that concerned me most is why all-out war? Why in the past it was considered, maybe a special operations or CIA type of execution that we would do to find the folks and either bring them back to justice or kill them, as we've done. And I couldn't figure that out because I just didn't understand why. Now, to bring myself back up is that sometimes faith just happens. And I retired from the Air Force in 2003, and sadly, it stuck with me as I was sending folks off the war, first to the Afghanistan war, and then later, just before I retired, to the Iraq war. I was always bothered. I never did have that answer. Why were we swiftly going to war in Afghanistan, and all of a sudden, before we could even finish in Afghanistan, we headed off to Iraq? Where faith brought it to me as I retired, I don't know if it was my attachment to General Myers, who happened to be the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff as the Afghan war was coming in to fruition, but I ended up in OSD policy. And all of a sudden I was tasked to be a part of a small team as I mentioned to some folks, it was almost like the Pentagon Papers of the two wars, and where I had an opportunity to do a lot of reviewing. And what I found out, and what really disturbed me when we talk about special interest agendas and so forth, was that not only was, sadly, the 9/11 attacks and that our response to it a gift for bin Laden, but also it was a gift for that administration as well. And what do I mean by that? Well, you had, and probably many of you studied the history. One individual himself, Paul Wolfowitz. It was always his desire to go into the Middle East. They just really never had, the justification. I'm gonna call it an excuse though. So you put together a perfect storm. 9/11 happens. You have bin Laden is excited about that. And then you have the administration, sadly, excited about that because, and I hate to use those words, but it's factual. It gave them an opportunity to be able to go in and do the true deed they wanted to do. And so I will share something with you when we talk about, and I guess I can say rest his soul, but Donald Rumsfeld, he had the big plan. He called it, I remember seeing a memo, he had these famous, what we call snowflakes in the Pentagon. He put a lot of notes and he called them snowflakes, plenty of them. I saw probably every snowflake regarding the Afghan and Iraq wars I probably saw. And one of the things he wrote, I think it was Peter Rodman at the time, he said, he remembers something Af Landon told him, and he remembers something about Roosevelt. When you're in a bind, Rumsfeld was always bothered by, we're in a bind in the Middle East. We're the strongest military power in the world. We always want to use that. We're the strongest, we're the best. I'm trying to say who we're trying to sell that to. Why do we have to keep saying that? But anyhow, he had this dream. Why don't we use our military might to go into the Middle East and make it like us? So that gave him the opportunity. He called it, when you have a problem, enlarge it. And so you remember we're talking about the so-called war on terror. Well, that's where that phrase came in from. It came from some general sitting in a meeting with Rumsfeld, the war on terror. You could enlarge. Instead of going after the terrorists, we can get our main objective. We can scare the American people to death, thinking there'll be terrorists coming over here. We're going to fight them over there. So what we're going to do, okay, we're going to enlarge the problem. We're going to enlarge the problem. We're going to come out and say, well, you know what? We're going to go after every country that we say and have determined that sponsors terrorism. And that gives us justification to go in Afghanistan, scare the American people first. That was their justification. We had a guy by the name of Doug Fife, after this all was over and said, and I see Karen's, nonverbal there because I'm sure she knows Doug Fife well. I had to work closely with Doug Fife on this little project that I was working on. And, we had this person that was really feeding Rumsfeld and Wolfowitz on how we can do this. I called him the mastermind of all this, to be quite frank with you. We blame Rumsfeld, we blame Wolfowitz and so, but I think I give Doug Fife, if I give any brains. If we talk to one of our other colleagues in Larry Wilkerson, he'll say that Doug Fife doesn't have any brains. But I say the guy, he was a pretty smart guy because he knew how to feed Rumsfeld and Wolfowitz, guiding words to push them. But anyhow, they had to find a reason. And Doug Fife was really concerned. We just can't go in and start these wars without justification. And so that's how the war on terror was created. Now, where are we right now? As you alluded to earlier, we've had, I think the last count I saw was 13 killed, 15 injured in Afghanistan. And now folks are saying, is it a revolving door? Do we have to send more in? Well, my answer to that, for the profiteers and those that I call warmongers, is that I heard something today. I heard Bob Beer from former CIA.
Something happened to the audio. It's not as good. Like it was good and then it went away.
Okay, how about now?
It's
Close.
Yeah, I think because I'm moving, I just start getting so excited. How about now?
It's faint. It's very faint.
It may have just.
Karen, let me see if I can. Let's remove again.
You're getting close.
You just have to stick your whole face into the computer and then we'll hear you.
Okay, how about now?
It's good. Yeah, it's fine.
All right. But the only other thing I just wanted to mention is that when we keep using an excuse about going after terrorists, going after them there and over here, I'll say two things to that. One, you can't kill every terrorist. If you think about this, as I heard Bob Beard say, it only costs $100-something to buy a backpack, and then you can make a bomb right in your home. And we're keeping our men and women there as pawns, whether it be in Afghanistan or Iraq. The other part I'll say to this too, that hits me dearly, is that I spent over a decade. I was first based after I left the Pentagon. I was based at Walter Reed on behalf of the Air Force and then the Army, and helped the past few years OSD, helping our wounded warriors. And I was thinking that this was slowly going to disappear until today. And so when we have the profiteers, and we have those that are promoting wars, and we've got to fight them over there, they don't think about the results of what it do to the men and women and their families. One of the things I used to challenge after, whether it be 9/11, we went off to Afghanistan, and then also the Iraq War. When I was at Walter Reed, every congressman that came through there, I would tell them this, because they knew I'd been in the service for 28 years. Thank you for your service and sacrifice. I would stop them right there and say, no, don't thank me for my sacrifice. You thank that young man or that one young woman that you just left at that hospital bed for their sacrifice, because your vote and your concurrence of this war, of these wars, is the result of what you see right there. The person that lost both arms, the person that lost, both legs. And so that's what drives me to try to keep us out of these endless wars and not let the folks use as an excuse what happened today, that we have to stay, because they're sitting ducks. And one other thing I just want to mention when we were talking about something that Danny mentioned there is that when we talk about, hey, we need to stay now, we need to not leave. It continues. It's a revenge map. Now, to build everybody up, we gotta stay. We gotta go in. We're gonna get them. We're gonna get them all the way to the end. Rest assuredly, we're gonna get you. That's revenge. And as Danny mentioned earlier, okay, we are talking about now. We get that revenge. Guess what? Now they want revenge. It never stops. So I'll stop there and just stand by for questions, but I can go on and on about this. I feel daily about it.
No, it's great. I appreciate it. It's interesting when you say who wins is Osama bin Laden. I'm thinking who's winning is Lockheed, Raytheon. Like, that's who I think of as winning.
This is winning.
Yeah, that's who's ultimately winning. But Karen, I wanted to ask you, I mean, I know that you were in Iraq. No, you weren't.
My career path is similar in some ways to Dennis's, and I can't believe you brought up Fife, because that's what a bad memory. He was our boss, and I don't, he's a sociopath. Okay, he's a murderer. This is bad stuff, and I know one of the generals, Pacific Command general, we quoted that he was the dumbest, and I can't use the foul language. SOB on the face of the earth. He was that, but like you said, he knew how to sell his agenda, and he knew how to work the system. He had enough friends in the political appointed cadre to get what they wanted started, which they did get started based on lies, and not just corruption, but the breaking of laws. I mean, we had talking points marked secret and top secret, and you'd see them in the front page of a Judith Miller article in the New York Times the next day, and it would be like, well, who leaked it? Well, they weren't worried about who leaked it. It was them who leaked it. They wanted it there. And to bring back to the present day, I did watch, I listened to Biden's speech and whatnot. I'll just share a couple of things. And the last thing I want to say, you probably think I'm crazy, but in the how these things go, a withdrawal after a defeat. Now, the United States doesn't want to use the word defeat. It was a defeat, and we were withdrawing in the wake of a defeat. We didn't use those words, so it seems like a lot of people were unprepared for what that's going to look like. It always is chaotic. We have in our minds, if you're my age, visions of Saigon helicopter, and of course they've been replayed on the television for people that didn't get to watch it on TV in 1976 or 7, whenever it was. But these things are chaotic, and the very fact that the Taliban is well organized, and why is the Taliban so good? Well, first off, we made it good by fighting it for 20 years. That's how they're good. That's how they know how to organize. They know how to do stuff. They know how to carry weapons. They know how to get their people to go where they need to go. They've been fighting us very dedicatedly, with one agenda in mind for over 20 years. And they fought the Russians before that, and they ran the country for 6 years up until 2001. We worked with them as the government in 2001. We gave them a financial award. Colin Powell handed them multiple millions of dollars saying, thanks for getting rid of all the poppy. That was June 2001. We were back at him in November. And of course, the poppy went nuts. We've had this, we're not talking about drugs here, but plenty of drugs in Afghanistan, in part direct result of our activities and perhaps our interests, because all that dirty money gets washed clean sometime. So we got that. But this withdrawal is actually not as chaotic as the mainstream media is making it to be.
Wow.
One of the things that made it bad, and not to point fingers because we can all do that, but there wouldn't have been a terrorist vulnerability at the outside of that airport at these gates if we hadn't have told people, show up, bring your friends and family, and hang out there, and we'll process you through, which is it's clear we processed lots of people through. We've gotten a lot of people out, so of the NATO and other airplanes. But we got people in a group, in a huge, massive group. That is target written all over it. Okay, now, this is where you're going to say, well, Karen, you're a little nutty. We have to think about the history of ISIS, all the ISISes, whichever, ISIS-K, you can say, oh, they mean something. Well, first off, they're not a major threat. Taliban's going to stamp them out in 2 seconds after we're gone. They know how to do that. They know who they are. We don't even know who they are. The Taliban knows exactly who they are. They know where they live, where their parents live, where their uncles and aunts live, where their camels live. They know. So that's not an issue. But what historically in Iraq, ISIS, what did the people in Iraq think about ISIS? They said the CIA created ISIS. The United States created ISIS. Why do they say that? Because conveniently, every time we were going to leave someplace, ISIS would attack, and we'd have to say, oh, no, now we have to stay. We saw that under Bush. We saw it under Obama. We saw it they used the same thing under Trump. Trump wanted to leave. Trump, one good idea Trump had. And this thing about the Taliban, you can badmouth them all you want to. We've been talking to them for 2.5 years. That started under Trump. He talked to them. He didn't even include the national government that we were paying and we appointed. He talked to them because he wanted to get our troops home. Say what you will about Trump. He did not like it. He didn't serve in the military, but he didn't like to see young men and women die. He did not, on a personal level, he didn't like that. And Biden, one good thing Biden has done is stuck with that plan. And I didn't read from his speech that we're going to go back in. First off, I was worried they're going to have to take him out on a stretcher after the first 5 minutes. I thought the man was going to fall down. Just very not with it. Okay. Then he took questions and he had to say, and he said what he said. He got his points out. I did not take from that speech that Biden has any intention of going back into Afghanistan. But why we're all talking about the possibility is because there are people that want to go back into Afghanistan. First off, there's people making money off Afghanistan. Okay. Second off, we want access to those bases. And there's 2 ways to get them. At this point, there's 2 ways to get them. Be friends with the Taliban, which is a dual track effort. We're trying to do that. We've been doing that for 2.5 years. We were friends with them in 2001. We can be friends with them again. And the other one is to not be friends with them, say there's a terrorist problem that we have to go help with, and then assault them from over the horizon and go back and get some of our lily pad bases that Donald Trump was so excited about putting in every country that encircles Iran. So this thing has a big image, a big picture. This is what I didn't like about Biden's speech, and I will shut up. I didn't like about Biden's speech that he did not speak to this 20-year event in the context of the great game, in the context of the neoconservative vision that Doug Feith had great success in kicking off in the early 2000s. He didn't talk about it in those terms. He acted like this is just something, the 13 to 12 guys at the time he gave his speech, it was 12 dead Americans. Well, there's a lot more than that dead Afghanis and men, women, and children piled up against the wall of the airport. He's still in the old way of dealing with what these wars are. These wars are major destruction for the people that we go and bomb, for the countries that we destroy, Iraq doesn't even have clean water. 20 years after we didn't fix anything. Okay, it's worse than Flint, if you can imagine that. It is worse than Flint. We did that to them willfully and aggressively, and we wonder why they're, like Dennis said, we create these terrorists. Now, whether we call them ISIS or we just create people that want to join a type of ISIS and kill Americans, we did this. The fact that it's stopping, I'm elated. And this exit, and you can blame everybody you want to or nobody, this exit's going way better than it could have gone so far. As long as an airplane doesn't get shot out in the next 5 days, out of the sky, if that can be prevented, this is a blazing success.
If I could make one other comment, I know you step in, and this is all Karen and I had emotional work as these things got started. We worked in OSD policy, so we know the history and how these things were brought about. But let me just say this, Karen, Tommy Franks is who you were talking about.
That's right.
Tommy Franks. And then the other thing, when we talk about I know he's concerned about, military industrial complex. When I think about Doug Feith, he had ties to General Dynamics, Lockheed Martin, and they were all inside the Pentagon. The other thing I would mention too, when we talk about what happened today, what scared me when you hear those that want us to continue to stay in Afghanistan, and we talked about the media, I was scared something like this was going to happen today because there were some folks talking it up, really. During this, I absolutely support President Biden what he's doing. The other presidents didn't have the guts to do it. President Obama, I love President Obama, but I was upset at him because there's no such thing as a good war. He wanted to get us out of Iraq, but he goes into, hey, just a good war, Afghanistan. No, it wasn't. The second thing I will say is that he wanted to get out of Afghanistan. Trump, as Karen said, I smiled. That's the only thing I agree with Trump on. He wanted to get out of Afghanistan. However, he was scared to do it. Now, the media and other pundits were saying, oh, well, there's going to be a terrorist attack. I always wonder, are you putting ideas in the folks to say, hey, you know what? There's my press. We're going to make this happen. And so that concerns me. And so I was worried, and I'm not surprised that this happened today.
Like, to me, and I know nothing about military stuff, but it was very common sense to me that this wasn't going to go well no matter who did it, which is why nobody wanted to be the president to do it. I think that they anticipated this being what it is, maybe not exactly, but they knew it would be bad, which is why none of them had the guts to do it. So I actually do appreciate Joe Biden for doing this. But I do find it infuriating that you've got the left attacking him from the right. Like, is anybody noticing that there doesn't seem to be either group or either party, like no media, nobody that's on the side of peace?
And I think that
the money party.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
both.
And I think
both.
And I think this is a great transition to what is the biggest cause of why we're there and why we see the problems that we see all over the world. And that is the military industrial complex, which is led by Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, and Boeing. Raytheon, Honeywell, and General Dynamics are three of the biggest financial contributors to our Congresswoman. These things are not mistakes. They're done on purpose. And the concern that I have, not just because I think that this is at the heart of why we have endless war, why we have $1 trillion military budget, but also because even if we do get out of Afghanistan, there's the looming prospect of going to war in Cuba or Venezuela.
Oh, we'll be somewhere else.
So that's the thing. Maybe things are looking one way right now, and one political party is going to try to use it to their advantage. But then the next thing you know, you start a war somewhere else, and the party in power that starts a war usually sees the benefits of it. So I'm curious to where you guys see that the discussion going, because all too often, I don't think we really hammer home enough just how powerful these multinational corporations are and how they basically dictate policy, foreign policy on Capitol Hill.
I'll start on that. I mean, look, my soldiers, three of my soldiers didn't come home from Afghanistan, and 9 of their limbs didn't, and they made between $30,000 and $40,000 a year doing that. Now, I was criminally complicit in a war that I shouldn't have been a part of, and I won't speak for them, but that's how I feel. So I'm not just glorifying the soldiers by saying that. They were ordered to do their thing, and they didn't make a whole lot of money at it. And I'll tell you, the ones that did get home, many of whom I'm still in contact with, many of whom still are out here in Kansas, right? Didn't really ever leave the area. There were no revolving door jobs waiting for them. No board slots, no strategic consultancies, not a lick of it. If they're lucky, they have a disability check and maybe a job with the railroad. Right? I mean, this is the reality of what it is. But one thing that Karen said that I think jumped out was we have to say the truth. Authenticity, right? Authenticity, which is this. We lost. I lost. I was fought to a draw by about, 50 to 70 Taliban fighters in my area, which was less soldiers than I had, with AK-47s and some RPK machine guns, and they had a mortar for a while before I destroyed it with a drone. What did I have? I know what I had. I had between 100 and 120 American soldiers on any given day, 40 to 7 Afghan army soldiers, 30 to 50 Afghan national police, and then 10 to 30 Afghan local police, which was really just a warlord militia that I was ordered to form that will now be another one of the warlords. Now, on top of that, I had B-52 bombers, A-10 close air support, F-16s, B-1 bombers. I had Apache helicopters, Kiowa helicopters. I had for 4 months a Green Beret A team, and for 1 month a Navy SEAL team, and that's what they had. And I was fought to a standstill. I was fought to a standstill. And this was during the surge when we had 100,000 soldiers. I have an enormous amount of professional respect for my mirror, which was the Taliban captain. I don't really know his name. He had some monikers I had heard about. Never met the guy. Like to shake his hand and say, good job, son. Not because I agree with his worldview, but as a professional soldier, which is what I was at that point in my life, I had a lot of respect for us. We have to be able to say that. But the thing is, the truth is, nation building failed for me. I mean, I could barely get out my gate. I mean, one time I dove into a canal because we were ambushed right outside the gate of our little outpost. And if you saw on a PowerPoint slide, my district, it was colored in, not as Taliban controlled, but as either American controlled or contested. Very deceptive, right? Very deceptive, because the truth is I had 2 outposts that couldn't even talk, that couldn't even communicate with each other. We couldn't walk or drive to it. We had a helicopter. We had to move water by helicopter. It was so dangerous. But so we really only held what, a few hundred square meters of the district at any one time, but it was reported as though we were contesting, or maybe we even owned it. So we couldn't do nation building. We couldn't do women's rights activism and all the reasons that Max Boot and David Ignatius, who still have columns at the Washington Post. Turns out you could be wrong about every single foreign policy issue for 20 years and have a column there. There is no accountability. David Petraeus just got 4,000 words in the New Yorker, lost 2 wars, leaked classified information to his mistress, which would have fired any one of his soldiers, right? While the CIA director, no accountability, gets any open hearing he wants. If he wants to go on MSNBC, he's going on MSNBC. Karen, you get on MSNBC a lot. Is it easy to get on CNN? Right? You can write about every single thing since 9/11, right? It doesn't matter. Nation building failed, and this gets to your point. I'm so glad you guys brought this up. Nation building failed in Kandahar, and it failed in Kunar, and it failed in Helmand. There's a place where it worked magnificently. The Northern Virginia suburbs of DC, where the war industry folks work and live, because nation building is going great. You know what else is going great? House building, because they all put additions on their homes with the blood money. And this statistics back this up, the exponential growth. So a tiny percentage of the American population has benefited mightily. My soldiers didn't, the average American citizen didn't, and Lord knows the Afghans didn't, and we don't even think about them. So I find it very obtuse to open up my email every morning from the Washington Post, from the New York Times, and I see all these articles, whether they're opinion columns or reporting that pretends to be reporting but is really an opinion column, saying, isn't it horrible about women's rights? Isn't it horrible about how democracy is dying in Afghanistan? That was never the motive in the first place, because if it was, we would have been invading when they were, burying women alive in stadiums in 1999 and 2000. But there was no calls for that. I was in high school. I remembered. I was a geek. I read the New York Times. But that wasn't happening. So that wasn't the motive, and it's not what we were able to do. The only beneficiaries of this are in the military-industrial complex. And it is hard to explain that to Americans, and I think part of the reason is there's a hyphen. And I'm being a little facetious, but it's an abstraction. If there's a hyphen in the word, no one's paying attention anymore. But you have to really break it down and call it what it is. Call it what it is. Be authentic. What is it? It's blood money peddled by the merchants of death, and they're the only people who profited from this. And the soldiers that Dennis worked with and has dedicated his life to, both in the service and out, and that we all served with, they were not the beneficiaries of it either. So I think we have to keep that in mind. And of course, let's not forget the local people who are really suffering. And I don't know. I just think that's an important component. So the problem, and my last point on this, the problem with the reporting recently is CNN spent 5 minutes in the last year covering Afghanistan. They've spent a bazillion, I think that's a word now, minutes ever since. The problem is, where do you start the clock? If you start the clock 10 days ago, Biden's the worst. If you start the clock 10 days ago, we need more soldiers here. It's easy to make that argument. I still reject it. But if you start the clock 20 years ago or 42 years ago, and we start supporting the Mujahideen, who are the reactionary elements who largely become what's now the Taliban, it's a whole different picture. And I think we have to do that. We have to be honest and widen the scope a little bit.
I really appreciate all of you, because one of the things that people like me that have never served, whenever we go to criticize some of these things, it's, you got to support the troops. Got to support the troops. If you don't support this, you got to support the troops. And to me, again, this was a common sense thing. I'm thinking, wouldn't the best way to support the troops is to not send them to war for profit? And then I started thinking, why do we even call it the Department of Defense? It's not. It's the Department of Offense. When was the last time and I'm being serious, that we really used our forces to defend ourselves? Like, when did that happen? Does anybody know?
Can I jump in?
Please.
Oh, listen, I hate to be so overbearing.
No, I like it. Go.
Listen, let me just comment on something Danny said first. And this is why, in the military, you need to have a mission, a defined mission, and an objective. And Danny, I want to say to you, I know you've been off screen here, but I just want to share with you. And this is what bothers me. First of all, Danny and all those that served in Iraq and Afghanistan, you didn't lose. Now, why do I say that, Dennis Fritz? It's because of the fact if we would have had an objective, and the original objective was, guess what? To get bin Laden. Well, bin Laden is dead. The next day, Al Qaeda. Well, Al Qaeda's on the run. They're underground. They're still out there, but they're not as effective as they were. And oh, by the way, we have this thing called Gitmo, where we put a lot of people behind bars. And so the objective, what it should have been, we won that. Now, you didn't go in there, Danny, on a mission of nation building. We're not designed to do that. We have Red Horse and all these Silver Engine organizations. They're there to build runways for us. So we go in to fight the battle and get out. So that's number one. Number two, when we talk about the different political parties, I am, I don't want to get into political parties and so forth. I do sit with one political party, but I'm against both political parties. Why am I? Because of the fact these wars, and I get upset, is because of the fact, whether it be the Democrats or the Republicans or anybody else, we use our troops as pawns in these military wars, whether it be for profiteering or political reasons. Why do I say that? When we talk about political reasons, let's talk about the Iraq war or the Afghanistan war. Every member of Congress, except one, voted and gave Bush authorization to go into war in Afghanistan, except one.
Barbara Lee.
Barbara Lee of California, the only one. Why did they do that? And just get to the Iraq war, things that I experienced in OSD policy. Politicians don't want to look, when you talk about, hey, we have to support the troops. Well, politicians on the Democratic side of the house, they don't want to look weak on defense. And George Bush, Doug Feist, he came with this theory we can put the Democrats on notice that we're going to say they're weak if they don't support us in this. And I tell you what, Hillary Clinton disappointed me because of the fact she voted for political reasons. They specifically pointed out Hillary Clinton that we know we can get her because she wants to run for president at the time. Okay, so one, let's talk about the politics of it. So that's why when you see the political parties, when Trump wanted to get out of Afghanistan, oh, you even had Democrats. Oh, no, you can't do that. Why? Because it was Trump. Am I going away again? Okay. The next thing, when it's politics again, I was like your previous guest because of the fact I was disappointed in Democrats. Steny Hoyer, I'm in District 5 in Maryland. I ran against Steny Hoyer in 2018, knowing it was going to be a big task. He's the number 2 guy in the Democratic Party, but he voted and supported the war. Why? Military-industrial complex. He does not have to raise any money because he's getting his money from big business. Okay, and so it's all about politics. The next thing I will share with you too, the biggest piece of the military-industrial complex that we don't like to talk about, that we forget about, the reason the military-industrial complex is so successful is because of the fact we have people like Petraeus and others who sits on the board of those big military-industrial complex. I asked the former chief of staff, there's quite a few, Karen to understand this, but my role as a major command chief and senior enlisted advisor, a lot of the 4-stars I mentored as oath when they were called colonels because they were a little afraid to talk to the 4-stars. So a lot of those 4-star young colonels went on to be 4-star generals. And so I had a relationship with quite a few of them. And I asked a previous chief of staff, why is it that these general officers get on Fox News? Why do they get on television and seem like they're promoting war? Well, he told me, Dennis, they do that because that's how they stay relevant. How do they, they get on these boards. Why do they seem like they're promoting war? That's how they stay relevant. And guess what? They get the money, not the young troops and the young officers that Danny talked about. It's the 4-star generals that you see on Fox, that you see on MSNBC, and that you see on CNN. Now, some of them talk candidly, but that's how they make their money. But guess what? In all this, whether it be the politicians, military-industrial complex, or the GOs, it's the young troops, the young enlisted men and women that I represented that suffer for the rest of their lives. And I see it each and every day. I stay in touch with them. They're the pawns of all these schemes, I will call them.
Karen?
Yeah. I participated in a movie in 2004 called Why We Fight, and it's really good. Not because I'm in it, but because the guy goes around and he asks like a whole bunch of people in this country from all different places, what they think. And of course, the average person is anti-war. He don't call it anti-war, but he is anti-war. He doesn't want to make war for any reason. He is not somebody who wants to go over to foreign countries and turn them into something else that they're not. That's the average person. That's where they are. But one of the things that the filmmaker did was track the military-industrial complex, military-industrial congressional complex. And he talked to congressmen, he talked to these people. But one of the big things is people work. Okay, this country of ours, this United States, our biggest export is weaponry or something that supports weaponry. Okay. And so when we don't, if we want electronics, we don't really make them here. We want clothes. We don't make them here. Food, we make some food here. We import a lot of food, but for the most part, weapons is what we make. Weapons and things to blow stuff up with. And so, and surveillance systems and security systems, there's a big bunch of stuff. And that employs people, and those people live in congressional districts, and they vote for congressmen who bring back the goodies, because that's all Congress is anyway, just redistribution of goods. Some people would say stolen goods, but it's redistribution of goods, and you want it in your district if you can get it. And if the guy delivers the goods, and what are those goods? Well, could be a manufacturing place. I know of the people in my family, extended family, and friends. A lot of them work for government. Now, they don't all work for the military, but a lot of them work for government or government contractors. And if you look into the domestic employment, which is not really military, but what is that? That's still supporting the government. If the government doesn't give me a job, if the government doesn't give my contractor a job, I'm not working next year. And I need that money. And it's not much money. You're talking, lower middle class, upper poverty class wages for the most part. I'm not talking about the generals and the guys in the boardroom. We know what they're making. But the average guy working at these plants, I know a guy in Florida. What does he do? He works in a plant that boxes up A-10 ammo. That's what he does. He doesn't make the ammo. He makes the boxes that the ammo goes into. He likes his job. So we have a system in this country. We have an economic system. And trust, look, I am not a leftist, okay? I'm a libertarian. I'm small government libertarian, okay? And everybody knows me, knows it. But we have a system, and it's not, I don't call it capitalism. Some people do. It's crony corporatism, crony capitalism, state capitalism. And that system's hard to break, because how many people do we have to unemploy from the A-10 ammo box factory to make a change? Because the congressman wants to get elected. He needs votes. How's he going to do it? Well, I'm closing all the it's wrong to have to work in a blood money industry. It's wrong to foment economic and environmental and human destruction around the planet on your tax dollar. That's wrong. So he's going to tell people that's wrong. And the first thing he has to do, you won't even have to do this, because the companies find out he's running on this. They're going to close their plants and say, see what, this guy, you don't want this guy because you're not going to have a job. And our whole economy in this country, and I'm not talking about the financial part's cleaning up all the opium money. So it's dirty too. But how do you change a system? You can't vote it out. We already know that. Democrats, Republicans, Independents, they all vote the same way when it comes to this stuff, because they're owned. And the people that vote, they want their jobs. They can't visualize. They can't see. So we need major change in a kind of way that may come in a chaotic collapse of some kind. That's one way it can come. If you think you can construct this change, you can make it happen. Where do you start? Because we got an iron triangle. Which part are you going to pull out first? Because if you cut the military budget, a whole bunch of people in this country are not going to be employed. Now, will they find new work? Maybe. Will they be happy about it? No. And all you need is CNN 24/7 on a new threat, and see how stupid it was to cut the military budget, because we got to go back into Afghanistan now. And that propaganda is not controlled by you and I. The people here aren't controlling that mainstream narrative. So I think we have big problems. As a libertarian, I say cut all of the central federal government's money down so they are forced to only make good decisions with what little they have left. That is a pipe dream. That I don't have any way of seeing that will ever happen. But I'm telling you, we got a bigger problem than just losing in Afghanistan. And I appreciate, Danny, what you explained on the truth on the ground and the fact that how important truth is. Because at some point, truth's all we're going to have left. And if you're working in a box factory and that's your job, and you make boxes for ammo that you don't believe in, you need to quit that job and get something else. Make a pizza. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Everybody is going to have to be involved in this. Not just some people, because we're up against, they own the media. Okay. They own Congress. What don't they own? They own 80% of the jobs in this country that make good money are defense industry jobs or related to that in some way.
Yeah. And this is, again, it gets back to our priorities in terms of where the money goes. And I think that this is a great closing topic to talk about, which is something that I've really been harping on very heavily as of late. And that is, there needs to be an alliance between the progressive left and the libertarian right, because there is a lot of agreement on a lot of primary issues. There is a difference in terms of certain economic philosophy as far as where libertarians stand and where progressives stand. But when it comes to primary issues such as foreign policy, endless war, civil liberties, progressives and libertarians agree almost unifying. They agree that the government is way too much in our business, and they have way too much control over how our tax dollars are allocated. I know MMT people don't want to hear that, but it is true. And so when it comes to endless war, libertarians and progressives absolutely agree that it is pointless. And they both agree that the primary cause of this is the military-industrial complex, which makes up such a significant part of our economy in the flyover states, in places that don't have major cityscapes, that have economic opportunity, especially when we talk about centralized planning versus decentralized planning. That's a whole big can of worms to talk about. Danny, you know it well, living in Kansas. I think that this is something that we can win on, because you are seeing that movement happen in the Democratic Party, where a lot of people are starting to run against these entrenched, war profiteer bought incumbents. We do not see it on the political right.
We'd like to.
We would. And I think seeing more of that non-corporate conservatives, there's so much to conservatism that makes sense. Not crony conservatism, which is what we have now, or crony liberalism, which is what we have now. And so if we can get to that consensus that that's where we need to go, I really think that that is how we break the stranglehold of the military-industrial complex. Libertarian right, progressive left need to form this cohesive alliance. Not going to agree on everything, but when it comes to these monumental issues here, we do agree. And I think that's where we can have a big coalition build. What do you think?
I have to throw a shout out. We do have a few conservative congressmen, or you call them conservative, but you got Thomas Massey in the House.
Okay, sure, yeah, okay.
Thomas Massey, but he would probably be called a libertarian. But what he really is straight up honest. He just calls it like it is, and he votes it like he believes. Of course, we had Ron Paul for some years.
Oh, and his son is nowhere near. No,
it's a sad thing. He's okay. I mean, I'll take him in the absence of when the alternative is nothing. But yeah, I mean, we have had people that are principled and kind of get this. And the reason that you got your progressive left and your libertarians, but in the middle, there are a lot of people that don't like war.
Yes.
And they wouldn't call themselves maybe lefties or libertarians, but they don't like war. They see it as pointless and wasteful and environmentally destructive, which it is, all those things, and expensive and all that. But those folks respond well to truth, to stories that are true from the heart, and people that'll listen to them and don't call them names right up front, because we've gone through this terrible Trump-Clinton battle and anti-Trump, pro-Trump, and it's really something that the military-industrial complex loves, because we're fighting each other instead of looking at what the real problems that are destroying our country and have been for a long period of time. See, that's the other thing. I'm older. Well, maybe Dennis. I might be. I think I'm older than you, Dennis.
No, I look at you by. No, I'm just kidding. I think I may have you by a couple.
Okay.
I just like having people on older than me. It just makes me happy.
Well, this stuff's been going on for a long time. This stuff's been going on for a long time. It's been evolving for a long time, and it's just like this exit out of Afghanistan. If you've been studying it, you would give this thing an A+. This is about as good as it could have gone. And 5 more days, keep our fingers crossed, pray it'll be all right. But if you only looked at it yesterday or 10 days ago, you're freaking out. This destruction of our system in this country, our political and economic system, orienting it around war, around blood money, is so locked in. I mean, Eisenhower, this is all with the Eisenhower group. I mean, Eisenhower kind of saw it, and that was close to 70 years ago. So we're near the end. We're at the popping point. We're at the breaking point. And a lot of people are going to be really surprised. They're going to go, oh my God, I just started. This is terrible. What's happening? Wait a minute. We've been working on this for 70, maybe longer, ever since World War II, really, ever since Korea. We've been working on this military industrial complex, locking it in politically, making sure both parties will do what we tell them, not what they believe in their heart to be true, to be right. So it would be good to help, maybe have older people on, or just have younger people that read history and put this in a perspective to prepare people. And this let me go on crazy. I think we need to prepare people for what's coming, because what we have right now in environmental terms is an unsustainable system. It is dangerous, deadly, it's expensive, and it cannot last. And when it breaks, people will get hurt, just like people in Afghanistan are getting hurt right now.
I want to leave the last few minutes to Danny, because we all like to hear Danny talk. And but I just want to say 2 minutes. I know we're running out of time. If you can hear me, okay. But what I like about this, if you look at Karen and one of our other colleagues, Larry Wilkinson, and I don't want to talk politics, but he's a Republican. Karen is a libertarian. I call myself an independent Democrat. The first time I ran as an independent. The last time as a Democrat. But you took my thunder, Karen, because the key word is truth, honesty, and being ethical. And if we have all that, we can bring it all together, because, to be quite frank with you, the old verse, money is the root of all evil. And so we can get over that and come together as you all are doing here, bringing the three of us together. We know this is a start, where we come from different political parties, but we're trying to operate on probably the root of all of our problems is military industrial complex and the sellers of weapons around the world. And that is a part of it. And I just want to thank you all for letting me be a part of this panel. And I'm sorry, I got a little emotional and I talked really fast because I'm passionate about this. But what really drives me, sadly, is we talk about our country, but my primary focus on the enlisted men and women, the young officers that we send off to these endless wars, and they have to suffer for the rest of their lives along with their family members. So once again, thank you for allowing me to be a part of this panel, and look forward to doing this again.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just thinking we could have a whole discussion on how I think our military is our jobs program, and how people come out of high school and have nothing better to do with themselves, and especially poor and vulnerable and people of color that end up basically going that route because it's what's offered. But that's a whole other. We had Isaiah James on, who was running, and that was one of the things he said is he served because he didn't know there was another option for him.
And that's why I joined. Back in 1975, I joined. From Fayetteville, North Carolina, because that was the way out for Afro Americans to go into the military. Sadly,
right. All right, Danny. Now, I have personally listened to you speak for about 24 hours and change in listening to the audiobook, but it was really good. And shout out for that, people. Check it out, True History of the United States. I think we should have history refreshers as requirements, all of us, because what we were taught as kids is not what is so. Right. I mean, and especially I'm assuming that Dennis and Karen, when you were in school, it was probably even less real. But yeah. So Danny, if you want to wrap, that'd be great.
Sure. Well, I will. These are dark times, and they have been. And what happened today and what's been happening in the last 10 days has been pretty seriously emotional. And I don't want to speak for Karen and Dennis, but I bet you I'm not wrong when I say, because I'm dealing with my veteran circle, right? For good or for bad or for my sins, I run with a group of people who served. And when Kabul fell and when something like today happens, my phone blows up. And it's not always Australian cable TV, which just happened, but it's people checking on each other. People I haven't heard from in years sometimes. And it's hard. And these are dark times. But you know what? Sometimes you need a little bit of levity. And you mentioned that there needs to be a progressive and a libertarian alliance. And as funny as it sounds, I used to have like a line when I used to have to go to DC for one event or another. And I would say, my rule is never have a second beer with a libertarian or a Marxist. Right? I say that as an insufferable myself. But the truth is that I've always, so I guess I'm kind of on the left. I mean, that's where I would fall. But I've always been big on the libertarian circuit from the start. In fact, when I first started this, it was the libertarians who would like, come on our show. I was like, a show? People want to talk to me? And that's where it started. And that was always interesting to me. So this budding alliance has always been there. It was there when I was still complicit in wars that couldn't be won, that I should have gotten out of. It's been there a while. And it does tie to the military-industrial complex. And what happens, and I think Karen's right about this, the real owners of this country, to steal from George Carlin, one of his best bits, the real owners, not the politicians, there for the illusion of, that you're in charge. The real owners, the blood money, the people in Northern Virginia, the real winners from these wars, they want us divided. They want us divided racially. They want us divided politically. They want the libertarians to be at the throats of the progressives. They want you arguing tax policy while the empire rolls on. This is not to say that those aren't important arguments, but I will say the empire will destroy us. Empires in decline behave badly, historically and conceptually. This is true. Let's table the argument of what we're going to do with the savings from $1 trillion a year on death until we end the wars. Let's have the conversation, but let's work together until then. We worked with the Soviets to win World War II, and then afterwards we worked all that out. It didn't go so well, and that's problematic. But think about what I'm saying here. If you want tax cuts and small government, you need to not spend $1 trillion on empire. If you want subsidized college and universal health care, you need the empire to stop spending $1 trillion. We have to be the only society on the planet, we are, that takes its wars down by massive percentages. We've really de-escalated the number of troops, at least, that are overseas, and our Pentagon budget is going up this year. Not only is it going up, it's going up $25 billion more than the military asked for. Listen, the military is not afraid to ask for a lot. If you're giving them more. So my point here is, and I think I've said it before on this show, I've said it before on others. If you want tax cuts, you got to cut the military spending. If you want universal health care, subsidized child care, you need to cut the Pentagon budget. And it's those trade-offs, it's those opportunity costs that make war a kitchen table issue. It should be a kitchen table issue for ethics. That doesn't always penetrate. It's hard to see. People are struggling. I'm not even judging. But that's why I said, if we're going to live in an advertising culture where everything is corporatized, then the DOD needs a new slogan. So whether what you want is tax cuts or whether what you want is subsidized college, the new slogan ought to be DOD, this is why you can't have nice things. So let's get the libertarians together. Let's get the liberals together. Let's get, I don't care who, together, and stop the indecency for strategic reasons and for ethical reasons. And that has to happen. And it's there. The votes are there.
Yeah.
And I'm just glad to be here. I watched Karen's documentary, Why We Fight, when I was still in, and was like, wow. And Larry Wilkerson was in that.
I'm going to have to go check it out now.
And so these are not just literally my elders and people that I was sort of watching way back when I was first questioning this stuff. So I'm just happy to be here, work with them. And I love this show. And I love you guys. And thanks for having us.
Thank you. You are hands down one of my most favorite people we've ever had on this show. And of course, I've listened to you longer than I think I've listened to anybody ever in an audiobook form.
I'll help you.
No, it was great. And in fact, it's one of the reasons the only time I'll really do audiobook is when it is the author. Otherwise it's kind of weird to me, but I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate people that have served, that are not gung-ho, go red, white, and blue, and recognize that imperialism is not necessarily the way to go. And I do appreciate that. And it's really nice to have that other narrative.
One of the most rewarding things that we did when Jen ran for Congress in 2020 was go and volunteer at the Veterans Nursing Home.
We did until COVID, and then they weren't letting anybody come in. But we were going to the Veterans Nursing Home, and it was really, I think that was very rewarding.
And it's amazing how much they just appreciate you wanting to hear their stories.
Yeah.
And because it seems like no one cares. But when they are good for business, everybody loves them. When they're not good for business, you could drop dead for all we care.
Yeah.
And that's the reality that is set in for so many people. It's no different than fighting the VC in the jungle and not being well adapted to not only the surroundings, but understanding that much like what transpired in Vietnam is transpiring in the Middle East, these people will die for what they believe in. We are not a martyr country that is, trying to change ourselves. We're trying to change others who don't want to be changed. But again, it's all a ruse.
Well, that and pillaging their resources.
Yeah,
Sure.
true.
You know,
I mean, if let's be real, if Afghanistan didn't have natural resources, we wouldn't be as interested in it, or Venezuela, or anywhere else for that matter. We don't care. Like we don't care about Haiti because they don't have anything we want.
no, and again, you're seeing, and we have to deal with the narrative down here when it comes to Cuba, because there is a lot of financially vested interest in Cuba. This is the thing that people don't understand. I told this story to a friend the other day. You realize that Las Vegas only exists because Castro took over Havana? That was Las Vegas. That was the playground, the paradise, if you will, for the rich and powerful who wanted to gamble and do what they wanted to do. And once, that government took over, we could no longer do business in Cuba. And that is the biggest reason why we want their government to change. Isn't because we're trying to free the Cuban people.
They have better healthcare than we do.
They want to have a government that is adherent to our corporate financial interests. And that's the same thing in Venezuela, with 25% of the crude oil supply on the planet that's under their soil, and we want it.
Right. But it's the same thing. And I'm thankful that veterans exist, and yet I wish they didn't have to. I think the best way to respect veterans is to not keep sending people to war that isn't needed.
And Karen, you did bring up a great point, and I want to close with this. You talk about the fact that so much of the military budget employs so many people throughout the country, and a lot of representatives are dependent on those particular voters because working class voters vote. They always do. And that is an important thing to remember. But when you think about the Army Corps of Engineers, and they talk about the fact that our infrastructure in this country is so far behind.
Oh, terrible.
And there is so much that current members of the military could be doing to help build our infrastructure rather than building bombs and dropping them on, brown people in places in the world that we don't need to be. There are ways to transition away from what we're doing. I think it's really just a question of how we bring people
Green
together.
New Deal is what we say, but the reality is that I do believe that a lot of people that are now serving as merchants of death could be doing things like building light rail and helping, with renewable energy. And I mean, there's no shortage of need in the economy for people to be working in the right direction. Like that's the thing. I mean, there's going to be retraining involved, and there's going to be some people that don't get into that's true.
It is the biggest regret. And frankly, it's mostly because of our limited financial resources at the time. But the one thing we did not do when Jen ran for Congress against Debbie Wasserman Schultz was hammer away at the fact that she is one of the true darlings of the military industrial complex. We did not make a point to really hammer, to hammer that point home. I really thought that was something that we really needed to do and could have had a greater impact. But obviously, as our platform grows bigger, we will have that opportunity to spread the word more so about these representatives who are not representing their constituents. They are only hurting them.
And we do want to do a Veterans Day panel. So actually, this was originally our thought was to have people come on for Veterans Day. But then once this stuff happened with Afghanistan, we're like, okay, let's see if we can talk about this now. But I still would like to have a Veterans Day panel. So
we definitely
be on the lookout for an email that says, please come back for our Veterans Day panel.
Karen Kwiatkowski, Dennis Fritz, it's been a real pleasure.
And I know you left Danny, but that's okay.
Danny put it in a private chat, I'm sure.
It's okay. I don't care.
It's all good. I know he had to go. Do you guys have anything that you want to plug? Do you have anything you're working on right now or anything that you want to mention if people want to check out?
These are actual working people. They're not promoting books.
Well, I don't know. I'm just asking.
And I already did Danny's shout out. Wait, Dennis, you have a book you want to sell us?
No, I'm not going to give you a name, but I am writing a book from my time of working in OSD policy, plus my time of over a decade working with wounded warriors at all three around veterans administration. So maybe we can come in and talk about that. I can give you more details.
Oh, as soon as you have a book, and especially if you narrate your own audiobook, I will most definitely listen, and you will come back on and talk about that.
Okay, we'll do that. Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Karen. We
Thanks
really
a lot.
appreciate it.
Great.
We'll see you soon.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Well, it is International Dog Day.
It's International Dog. Is it really?
Yes, it is.
It's International Dog Day. Okay, guys. So here's Lulu. Oh, and by the way, Dee Dee, is that who's out there talking about filling their bowl? One step ahead of you, my friend. That was a very heavy. It's always heavy for me, and especially because I have always really I have a lot of respect for people that serve. I have a lot of respect for people that put other things above themselves for the greater good. And it's always been a very sore spot for me that we take advantage of those kinds of people in the worst ways. See, I said those people again.
Yeah.
And guys, don't mind Scat Muncher in the chat. Just leave him be. He helps our algorithm. He's a fairly friendly troll. I know when new people come on there and they see him doing his nonsense, and he's really on fire today, they think, who is this troll? Don't mind him. Don't mind him. We don't even know exactly who it is. We have some suspicions, but we know it's not Jimmy Dore. So he uses that picture, but it's not Jimmy Dore.
If we've raged him enough that he feels the need to do that, then so be it.
I love talking to
our bootlicker of the week is The Economist, because they thought it was a good idea to put the biggest living warmonger on to have him write a column.
But do you see how we have a bootlicker licking a bootlicker?
Yes.
So I think that's brilliant. So here we have Henry Kissinger, who I think should die in prison as a war criminal that he is. And yet this is who The Economist is having write an op-ed piece on Afghanistan. So he's licking there's so much licking going on here for the military industrial complex. It's crazy. Why don't you explain the Kissinger story? Because I think I did that kind of cool. Never stop licking boots.
Henry Kissinger was given an opportunity to write an op-ed in The Economist. It's a conservative lean weekly paper, but it, for some reason, thinks that it is appropriate to have a conversation with Mr. Agent Orange himself. I can't even imagine how many deaths and traumatic livelihoods people had to suffer through because of what happened in Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. And so much of it is related to President Johnson's and, well, actually it was President Nixon's, but
they're all war criminals.
But President Nixon's Secretary of Defense, this man was a bastard.
He was Secretary of Defense
or Secretary of State. Secretary of State.
But then again, you have Madeleine Albright recently saying that all those deaths of Iraqi children was well worth it. It was well worth it. And yet we're like lauding these people. I don't understand it. This man should be in prison for war crimes. It was
not possible to turn the country into a modern democracy. Yeah, say that now 20 years after the fact.
But
creative diplomacy and force might have overcome terrorism.
How'd that work out? Yeah. And by the way, it should not be overlooked that this is somebody who Hillary Clinton admires like greatly and looks up to. I think that speaks volumes, just saying.
I really think that the people who really have a problem with war and take real exception to it. No, she wants to be.
I know, but you keep just picking her up and handing her off to me. Just don't.
So anyway, you're making me lose my train of thought.
I'm sorry, but I can't help it because she's like sitting there and I can't help it. It's Lulu.
I think that a lot of suburbanites that live comfortably don't really care about this issue.
No.
It's part of the reason why they're able to get away with it. I think that working class people all throughout the United States, of all different stripes politically, do think it's time. We do need to have an anti-war movement. I don't think the anti-war movement that people are envisioning that would actually get anywhere are ones where people are doing drum circles. Because
I love a drum circle.
I don't care if you do. I'm talking about what the general consensus of people actually want. If they see people hippity-dippities running around saying war is evil, they're not as inclined to listen.
Well, that's like when you try to argue about Medicare for all using the morality example doesn't work with people. But when you tell them that, oh, it's actually less expensive, then they listen. You just have to message people the way they need to be messaged.
Yes, and I think that is...
And by the way, I also have a very good Paul Wolfowitz anecdotal story that relates to my family personally, if you would like me to share, because it's kind of interesting. They talk about these people being psychopaths. My aunt and uncle, who are my great aunt and uncle, they were friendly at one point years back with Paul Wolfowitz's parents. Like this was way back. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if they would like vacation them. They lived in Tampa. I don't know how they knew them or whatever. And apparently they introduced my aunt and uncle to Paul. I don't know if he was like what schooling he was in at the time. Like, I don't know what he was an adult. He was like already, you know, an adult. And my uncle, who by the way was professor emeritus and chair of the psych department at the University of South Florida, just to give him some sort of like, you know, I'm giving him expert credibility. He said to me that when he met Paul Wolfowitz, that he looked like his eyes, like he was pure evil. And this was somebody that was young enough to be his kid. Like, this is not like he met him as an old man. So he met this kid at the time and thought he looked like a psychopath and he was evil. I don't know, but I think that that's pretty interesting. I'm just saying, that's my Paul Wolfowitz anecdote with my Uncle Jack.
Well, I think a lot of times when you think about, you know, the people who get involved in war profiteering, you do have to have sociopathic tendencies.
Oh.
You have to not be able to have empathy, because that's what a sociopath is, a person who lacks empathy. You basically see it as it's about me and about what I want. And so when somebody like Henry Kissinger is given a platform to espouse his feelings, his sentiments, if you will, about why Afghanistan was a failure.
It's all a failure because of people like him.
And yet
because
somehow
that's the whole
Henry
thing.
Kissinger is pushing 95. It's amazing how
it's really
bloodsuckers are able to live.
But you know,
as
like
long
what
as they
Karen
are.
was saying, people like Rumsfeld and Wolfowitz, the whole schematics for Afghanistan were laid out a long time ago for Afghanistan and Iraq. And both of those things were create consent, manufacturing consent was using 9/11 and, or whether it was weapons of mass destruction or whatever the thing was at the time was always manufacturing consent. But this does go back to those same people. They always wanted to be there and do this. They made a lot of money. They made a lot. People like Dick Cheney and whatever, they made so much money from these wars. Like, it's crazy money. But yeah.
I guess that's why Meghan McCain goes on TV and says that it's not a good idea. Or Liz Cheney goes on TV and says it's not a good idea.
No, she's looking at her stock options going down. She's not liking that. She doesn't like that. War is very good business.
We really do need to find a way to bring people together. And I think that the progressive and libertarian factions, if you will, in politics really do agree on these issues.
I think we should stop labeling.
Yeah.
Like, I think we should stop even saying progressives and libertarians, because it doesn't really matter. It matters per issue.
Non-corporate.
Well, right. Or just people that want us to not be in war. People that would like to not be killing people across the world when we can't even help our own people here.
Well, I really think it's important to highlight the representatives that are taking money from the military industrial complex, because not enough do it.
Most of them do.
Yeah. To what degree? That's what it comes down to. But if you're taking money from Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Honeywell, and General Dynamics, that's a problem.
But you know what? I've always argued that really it doesn't matter who you're taking your money from. If you're taking corporate money, you're supporting a system that allows for corporate money to buy your representatives. So for example, I know that there's people that they don't take any money from, let's say, the NRA, and they're very proud about that. They don't take NRA money. And that's great, you know, okay. But they're still taking corporate money. They're still taking PAC money. They're taking special interest money. So they're still perpetuating the system that allows groups like the NRA, which would also allow groups like military industrial complex, to purchase our government. So anybody who's participating in taking that money is facilitating that problem, even if they don't take money from those specific organizations. That's my thought. So I don't really care who takes military industrial complex money. They're all part of the problem.
If you become a Patreon, $5 a month.
Oh,
$10 a
yes.
month,
Get
or
yourself a Lulu sticker.
If you like the T-shirt that
Where's our
Jen is
Patreon?
wearing.
Yeah. Well, no, we don't. We have jerseys is what we give to Patreons. And her name is Lulu. And Lulu's the mascot. And I do have another dog named Sophie, and I get a lot of crap from my husband. Like, why don't you have Sophie stickers? Why don't you ever bring Sophie? Because Sophie doesn't ever come on the show, because Sophie doesn't ever be still enough to stay and hang out in this room with us.
That's true.
Sophie sits there and gets annoying and scratches at the door and whatever. She's just annoying. So she doesn't sit still. That's why Sophie doesn't get a sticker.
Well,
So-
if you would like to be a supporter of our show and appreciate our
Please.
content, listen, we would love to have 150, 200 live viewers at any one time.
Yeah.
We don't deal in the drama. We deal in the truth and what really matters. No offense, but it's the way it is. I know this isn't a sexy topic and not a lot of people want to hear about it, but it is very important because so much of our future is dependent upon whether or not we're going to be able to peel back from the military-industrial complex.
Well, in Florida, really, our bigger issues that we're going to be underwater.
That's
So
true.
it really.
I don't want to be underwater.
I
I
don't.
don't.
Well, I'm telling you, we're going to need to go to higher ground.
Yeah, we may need
But
to.
look, we designed this show. We never set it up to be a live stream originally. This was always a podcast, long form interviews, bringing on guests that were experts, authors, people that have interesting stories to tell and can educate us on a variety of issues. That was always the point of this. The fact that we do it live just is because it's fun, and yeah, we have our fun, but really this was not meant. So I don't ever get too upset when it's not. I mean, yeah, it'd be nice if there were 100 people watching us, but I care more that we're putting out like good information and building connections with guests that are really great. Like the fact that Danny Sjursen sent us the email after the first time he was on our show, he sent us a message saying, hands down, the best show I've ever had on a show. And we're like the smallest potatoes show that he probably has ever been on. So the fact that he said that really means a lot to me.
It does.
And we've had other
over
guests
quantity.
say that too. Rose McGowan said that to me. Like she was shocked at how we were with how I talked with her in the interview. Like she could not believe that, and I just think it means a lot to me that people like that. So,
Well, on Monday.
yes, who
do
we have on Monday?
On Monday, we have a couple of interesting guests. One, we are going to have somebody who has not been in the public spotlight for a while,
Oh, okay.
but was somebody who was
Oh, okay.
very instrumental in women coming forward against
Yes.
our president, and
Yes.
that is Lucy Flores.
Yeah, Lucy Flores. And for people who don't remember, Lucy Flores was the woman that was running for lieutenant governor of Nevada. Joe Biden, I guess, had gone out there to be at a rally or a speech, and he walked up behind her. He didn't know her. Walked up behind her, saying, sniffed her hair and kissed the back of her head, which is so unbelievably disgusting to me. And which was the impetus. And that was what motivated Tara Reid to come forward, because when people started giving crap to Lucy, she's like, I'm not going to do that.
I'm just Joe Biden.
Yeah, you need to stop.
Oh, come on.
You're very handsy.
No, I'm a little handsy.
You're very handsy.
Have you seen Lucy?
Yeah. And I haven't seen Lucy. I have no idea what she looks like. But what I do know is that if someone came up behind me and sniffed my hair and kissed me, I'd turn around and kick him in the nuts.
Well, protect my nuts.
You should protect your nuts. I'm surprised people haven't kicked them.
Well, look, here are the facts, Jack. We're getting out of Afghanistan, and I like to smell it. I know I get myself. Call me handsy Uncle Joseph.
Ugh, it's gross. So anyway, we're going to be speaking with Lucy Flores on Monday. And do we have a,
Why you gotta talk to her, man? Just bench.
who else do we have coming on Monday?
I'm going back to bed. I've done enough today.
Yeah, I can't even with him. It's just gross. He grosses me out the most, I think, of all your characters.
There's also
For some reason, he just grosses me out the most. 'Cause he's
I do not intend to do the Joe Biden impression when Lucy's on the show.
no, just like we didn't do it when Tara Reid was on, because we're not
No, I'm not masochistic, and I don't
no,
like it,
well,
so
and it's just rude.
it is. But
And
can
I
do it
find
now.
him gross, so I don't like it anyway.
Well,
The only one I like is Bernie, because I don't feel like I have to like leave the room to get away. So
Well,
who else is coming on Monday? Do we have
there is
some-
also a very important election for working actors, and that is
Oh,
going to
yeah.
be the SAG-AFTRA elections. And Jolie Fisher, who is running to be, I believe, the vice president of SAG, she's running with Matthew Modine, who is running to be the president. She is going to be one of our guests, and we may have a few others. You never know.
You never know who comes by here.
Yeah, you never know.
I
That's why you
kind
gotta
of wish
tune
we
in.
could do it like if we had like a live studio, kind of like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, kind of like when Kramer got the Merv Griffin set.
Scandals and animals.
Right. But then like somebody walk in and George Costanza, good to see you. Like I wish we had that. We actually have like a seating area and we could set up another camera and have that. Like we actually
Yeah,
could do that.
That could be an interesting
But
way
we
to
haven't been
podcast.
doing this. We've only been doing this since COVID.
Yeah, if we could
And
do
so
something
everything's
regular
been
person.
virtual. But
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but maybe we could try that sometime. And I think that
which interview?
I'm not going to do Joe Biden when Lucy Flores is
Oh,
here.
for God's sake. I don't like him doing it at all. And it's not your best.
It's not. It's definitely my
But,
weakest of my four.
Yeah.
But again,
No,
it was also-
I've been interested in the Lucy Flores thing since I remembered when it happened. And long before Tara Reid thing, I remember when it happened, and I remember thinking, "Oh my God, that's so disgusting. That is just so entitled."
Lucy is another one of what you would have called rising stars in the Democratic Party, particularly in the state of Nevada. And because she decided to speak up against her assaulter, because let's face it, that was assault.
Yeah. Friggin' gross.
That's the end of her career.
Well, you know what? It's very frustrating. I have to tell you, to me with Joe, it isn't even so much like I don't think of him as like a pederast or anything like that. I really don't. I don't. He's creepy, but it's just this air of entitlement that he feels that he is actually entitled to walk up to a woman that he doesn't know and put hands on her. I don't care. Like the Tara Reid thing is obviously to a whole other extreme, but that entitlement is suffocating. And that's why it bothered me so much about Lucy Flores. And people were saying, oh, it's no big deal because it wasn't something as egregious as what happened to Tara. People are like, well, it's not that big of a deal. No, it is a big deal. You don't put hands on someone else in any way. And it's just, I found that so entitled that it disgusted me. And the Tara Reid thing, and the fact that people don't believe Tara Reid is absurd to me. Like, how could you not believe? Like, as if what she's saying is so hard to
The only people who don't believe are the people that are seeing it from a political standpoint, not from an actual human standpoint.
I don't know. You could try to victim blame all you want. There is way too much video evidence of somebody being very handsy.
Yeah, the fact that you had Tara's own mother calling into CNN for 93, and they have the actual footage of it, and it's just, again, nobody makes that phone call unless something happened.
No. So you could say whatever you want, but anyway, so I am looking forward to talking with Lucy Flores, and I am looking forward to getting like the firsthand story, because for someone like her, it's a lot easier to recount a story than it is to have someone like Tara recount her story. So I think that it's not as like scary to talk about that, but it is so disgusting to me. People do not underestimate someone coming up to you and kissing you on the back of your head who you don't know. Gross.
Well,
ugh, he smelled her hair. I can't even. So gross. He's so gross.
Well, on that note, I know it's not the most positive thing, but remember, today is International Dog Day. Love and hug your dogs. Remember, we're going to do everything we can. Jen needs to hit the bong, and I need to get some food. And we really appreciate you guys, as always, coming on. And obviously, we will see you on Monday. It'll be a fun show. And we really appreciate you guys. We really do. You've all done an amazing job. Mr. Galley, we obviously send our best. There's no question that war is
that's
bullshit, and it shouldn't exist.
I don't know if it's son-in-law or sister-in-law, but either way, it's not good.
No.
And it's, look, my dad was, I hate to say my dad was fortunate, but he had high blood pressure, which was probably due to the amount of speed he was taking in those days. But and my uncle Billy walked in and played like he was mentally retarded and peed in his pants in front of the physical review board. And they asked him how old he was, and he pulled out a chain of paper clips. He had this whole. This is my uncle got out of going to Vietnam, and he had a lazy eye, so I don't know. And back in those days, things weren't computer where they could look his name up and see, oh no, this guy's fine. He's full of shit. They didn't have that, so he went in there and acted like he was really slow and pissed himself, and they didn't take him.
Well, a lot of people did a lot of things to get out of Vietnam.
Eating tinfoil, cutting off fingers. My parents had friends that did all sorts of stuff.
Well, our last two presidents figured out a way to dodge the draft.
I got to tell you, I'm very pacifist. I really am in a lot of ways. Like I don't like any of that, but it is something that I do think about when we have a president that has never served in the military.
Right. It
bothers me. It bothers me because I feel like I understand that, yeah, it's a civilian position and you're the commander in chief. And I get that. But it bothers me because I feel like you are in a position, and I agree with Karen. That's one of the things that I did like about Trump is that even though he is a draft dodger, he was at least wanting to get out of wars. He wasn't pro-war. A lot of these people are pro-war and they never served. It's very frustrating to me.
And again, I think it speaks to, where is Biden going to go from here? You know, where is Biden going to go from here? Is he going to keep us?
I don't think Biden knows where he's going from here. That's part of the problem. Is Biden's not going. Look, it doesn't matter who's sitting there. It doesn't matter who's sitting there. What matters are the people, the real bosses. That's what we're saying. There will always be these wars. And even if we're pulling out of Afghanistan, let's not forget that we're currently drone bombing, 7 countries?
If you are not making the,
like, we don't even talk about those countries.
if we're not making the multinational corporations in order to hurt their bottom line, then war will continue. And that's it. So if you have a representative that takes corporate special interest money from the military industrial complex,
I told you, it doesn't matter where they get it. If they take special interest money, they're part of the problem.
they are. So one
Part of the
connects to
problem.
the other, and you cannot be connected to it. If you are, then you will see what
No, we
ultimately
need
ends up
people like
happening.
Morgan in the Senate.
We'll see what happens. And we will
I'd
be
love to
doing
see her
more.
win. I'd love to see Erica Smith win.
Sure.
Like, there's
So we'll be doing a lot in terms of candidate panels going forward.
probably, I honestly, not until like January. I mean, I don't know how much we want to like really be focused on that. I kind of want to get through
Sure.
Veterans Day with our plans, and then we could see what happens there.
Well, in the meantime, we really appreciate you guys as always, and we will see you on Monday.
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 And we will be, and
Monday.